what decisions have you overthought the most as a leader?
What decisions have I overthought the most? I go back to what I said earlier, firing people early in my career. I would overthink that way too much. If they're not right, they're not right. It's hard
Yeah,
to change the track.
that's because you're kind, and it is symptomatic of
It's
thoughtful. Yes.
empathetic, but you put the empathy in the right place. And as I said, I learned to put the empathy towards the other people in the business and that person that needs to leave. It's better for them too, and do it
Yeah.
in the right way. Yeah.
Welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast with your hosts, Idea Monkey Mike Maddock and ringleader John Tobin. We're two founders, a serial entrepreneur and a billion-dollar operator, to talk to leaders about how, when, and why they made their most pivotal decisions in life. Join us as we share wisdom, mistakes, and a few laughs learning from the brightest minds in business today.
Welcome to Your Seat at the Table podcast. Just Mike Maddock today. And lucky me, I get to talk to my friend Tim Molek. Imagine leading a privately held organization that is owned by 400 descendants of the founder. That's what Tim did. And I imagine he's got all kinds of stories to share about leadership. And I'm going to try to get him to share a few of them. Tim, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. So, Tim, give us a little bit of your background. How did you wind up with the wheel in your hand for such a famous organization? Tell us about the organization. And if you could, just like as you go through your career, drop in a couple of nuggets of wisdom you learned along the way.
Absolutely. So I started my career as an engineer. I worked as a manufacturing engineer many years ago in a stainless steel food service plant. I hope the dog's not coming in on this, is
Do
it?
you have a dog, Tim? What kind of dog do you have, Tim?
I have two dogs. The loud one here is a mutt that we got from the shelter, and we did the doggy DNA test because my daughter wanted it for Christmas. And he is part Bichon, part Dachshund, and part Super Mutt. And he very rarely barks, so I can't believe this is happening right now.
You could be being robbed right now. Are
I
you
know,
okay?
right?
Do I need to send
Right.
help? You know, I
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
dog in college and I got two of them. I got them out of the shelter. Long story, won't bore you. But one of them would bark incessantly. So I got toilet paper rolls, and every time it barked, I would wing it across the room at the dog's head. So I taught the dog two things: not to bark and to duck. So it would, anyway.
This guy's hard to stop though once he starts. And then I have a 17-year-old dog. He just turned 17 in December.
Oh, good Lord.
And he's lying quietly over here on the floor. I'm going to
Yeah.
switch to headphones.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Wait a second here.
Live podcast, people.
Right. All right. Why my headphones aren't picking up? Well, it wouldn't work on that side. Here we go. Okay. We better?
Yeah. Okay. So,
All right.
we will edit that out, I think. Just
Sorry
'cause
about that.
No, it's okay. So, so go ahead and give us your
Yeah.
how you got your career. We'll edit all this out. Let's do a quick pause right here, and then you can just start.
Okay. So I started my career as a manufacturing engineer. My degree was in industrial engineering from Northwestern University. And it was the late 80s, and I really loved it because that was when manufacturing was really learning a lesson here in the United States from all the things that the Japanese were doing to really kind of change the way we produced for years, from batch manufacturing to just-in-time manufacturing, and laid the foundation for what we use today, which is called lean. So I was doing that, and I had a great boss, and he gave me a lot of flexibility. And when I looked around, though, I realized a lot of organizations had leaders that weren't from the engineering side, other than maybe Motorola at that time. Everyone else was not engineering based. So I decided to go back to school at night and got my degree in marketing and finance from Northwestern. The original goal was actually operations and finance. But interestingly enough, my operations courses were actually behind what I was learning at business every day because the market was changing so quickly that the textbooks were old. So I ended up taking a marketing class, which I really enjoyed, and decided I was going to change my career. And so I dropped operations, focused on marketing. And after 5 years at that company, finishing my degree from Kellogg, I was able to get a job in CPG.
So you're a unicorn because most marketers are not engineers by training.
That's true. It is true. And I was fortunate that Unilever gave me a chance to make that shift because they don't necessarily want to hire engineers as well often, especially
Hey, Tim,
CPG.
Tim, this isn't going to work.
I can't believe this. Hang on one second.
Okay, welcome to your Seat at the Table podcast. It's Mike Maddock sans John Tobin today. I'm here with my buddy Tim Molek. Imagine running a company that is privately held and owned by 400 descendants of the entrepreneurial founder. That's what Tim got to do. And so he's got lots of stories, I'm sure. I'm going to try to get him to tell a couple of juicy ones and some lessons about growing and running a private firm. Tim, welcome to your Seat at the Table podcast.
Thank you, Mike. And I appreciate you having me here today.
Well, it's great to see you. And okay, so let's do this. Tell us how you wound up with your hand, the wheel in your hand. And along the way, if you could give us a little nugget of things you learned along the way, that'd be great.
Sure. So I actually started my career as a manufacturing engineer in the 80s. Ages me a bit, yeah. My degree was in industrial engineering, and I was fortunate to work for a boss who had great foresight, and he saw what was happening in Japan at the time. So when he brought me in, he asked me to learn as much as I can about what the Japanese were doing and try to implement that in our factory. We made stainless steel food service equipment at the time. So this was around just-in-time manufacturing, cellular manufacturing. These were things that are all predecessors to what we now call lean manufacturing today and 5S systems.
Yeah.
And so the factory was kind of my lab, and I was able to do a lot of things. It was really an amazing experience. While I was doing that, I looked around at organizations, realized that I wanted to keep growing in my career, and saw that engineers typically weren't running organizations, other than maybe Motorola at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I'd go back to school at night while I worked, and I wanted to get my degree in operations and finance. But what I found was the operations was changing so dramatically at that point. What I was learning in the classroom was behind what was actually happening on the shop floor, which I'm sure is happening today, as a matter of fact, when we talk about AI.
Every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I looked for another area of expertise, and I took a marketing course, and I really enjoyed it and realized that at heart, I am a marketeer, even though I like numbers. And so I decided to get my degree in marketing and finance.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished, I was fortunate enough that Unilever took a shot on me. I moved to New York City and went into brand marketing.
Okay, so hold on, a couple of questions. First of
Yeah.
all, an observation, you're a unicorn. So marketing and finance, two sides of the brain that usually don't like each other too much. Was your first, when you were doing stainless steel manufacturing, how big was that company?
They were about $40 million.
Okay, so privately held, small company.
Privately held small company, yeah.
And it sounds like the person that ran that company gave you a lot of autonomy to learn.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so you went to Unilever, which is not a small privately held company,
No.
and learned about consumer packaged goods. What'd you learn?
Actually, one of the interesting things I learned is there isn't a huge difference on a lot of the things you do on a day-to-day basis from engineering to marketing. It's a lot of project management. It's a lot of getting other people to do things. It's about leading teams.
Wow.
So that was quite insightful that I was surprised about that.
Do you
Yeah.
think so? I know Unilever, we've done work for Unilever, and they're very formulaic. And I've noticed over the years that marketers used to be artists, and now they're data scientists in a lot of ways. It's shifted. So I can see how having an engineering background, which I'm sure made you, and early Lean Six Sigma stuff, made you very aware of process and systems. So that served you early in your career. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did.
How long were you at Unilever?
I was at Unilever a total of 7 years. Yeah. But I had a brief stint with Keebler in between.
Side story, my father's license plate was Ernie the Elf. He worked for Keebler for 37 years.
That's funny. I wonder if he and I ever crossed paths.
George Maddock.
George Maddock.
Don't forget the cones. My dad ran their cone factory. That was I remember what they call him at work. That's how his voicemail was. Anyway, I digress. So the Unilever, Keebler, did you go back to Unilever or what?
Yeah.
How did that?
So I was working with Unilever in New York City. After a couple of years, I loved Unilever, by the way. They're a great company. New York City was kind of getting to me. So I wanted to get somewhere other than New York City. And I ended up taking a job back here, which I'm from the Chicagoland area, with Keebler. And that just was by chance. And I was with Keebler for a few months, and I learned that selling food products is much more difficult than detergent. Because in detergent, if you start losing share, you kind of know where to go. But in food, and at this time, this was like the mid 90s, people were moving away from traditional cookies and crackers to pretzels because it was a healthier alternative. But if you didn't look at pretzels in your, if you were just looking at competitive cookies or crackers, you were missing where the volume was going. So it's extraordinarily hard. I have a high level of respect for people that work in food marketing.
As do I. And it used to be, well, yeah, there are lots of lessons on there. So from Keebler, you went to?
So I was at Keebler, and then Unilever called me back. I was only at Keebler maybe 8 weeks. And this was when the trend of putting customer-specific marketing managers in the field was starting. And so Unilever wanted to put someone as a customer-specific marketing manager in the Midwest, and it would have been here in the Chicagoland area. And so I said, yes, I'd do it because I had done a number of years in marketing. I'd never really done the sales side, and this was an opportunity to see what happens on the sales side and be on the other side of the desk.
So what I'm noticing is that you are bouncing around from engineering to marketing to finance, from small company to large company, from consumer packaged goods. Like you're obviously you're curious and you're a learner. Question that nobody's ever asked you before. So you go from Unilever to Keebler and back to Unilever. You don't have to tell me the exact amount, but what percentage shift in revenue did your household have? Did they pay you more coming back? Was that because a lot of people are afraid to make moves from one company to another. You did it. You had to think, oh my gosh, 8 weeks and I'm going back. That's going to look interesting. Did you make more or less going back?
It's funny you asked me that question. It was about the same amount of money, but I got a company car for the first time.
There you go.
And that was a big deal. Yeah. And I remember, Mike, it was a white Caprice Classic. It looked like a cop car.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Remember those? Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay. So now now you're back. Then what happened?
Yeah, so I'm back at Unilever. Unilever consolidated. We had a bunch of different businesses across the country, and they consolidated, and everything was going back to the East Coast. And for me, my next step was going to be back in the East Coast. And while I was back in the Chicagoland area, I re-met my wife. We'd known each other earlier, started a family, and she and I agreed we didn't want to go to the East Coast. So I started a soft search for what my next opportunity would be. As I said, I really enjoyed Unilever, but I didn't want to go back east. But one of the things you talked about earlier, the learnings I had through my career was I was at this small company. And what I really liked about that was I got to be the big fish in a small pond. Yes. Unilever was great, but I was working on the Dove brand at the end of my career, and I didn't get to make any decisions on Dove. And because it was such an important entity, of course, it would be almost C-suite decisions. And while I understood it, I prefer to be the person more making those decisions.
I think that's a really important insight for young people listening. It used to be you could go to General Electric or a company like that, and if you were on the executive track, they would switch you from sales to marketing to finance because they were trying to teach you how to do all those things. When you're in a small company, big fish, small pond, a small university, a small town, you get to play all the sports. You have to. If you're in a small town in Iowa and you don't go out for basketball, there's no basketball team. If you're in a small company, and you don't you have to take stuff on. You become almost a great generalist, which serves you. And so I think starting in a small company is a really good strategy. I'm very proud of people that have come through our small companies and gone on to run really big companies, but because they learned a lot because they had to. There was no one else that was going to do it. Was that your experience?
For sure it was. And I was lucky enough to find this opportunity with Freudenberg, even though, as you said at the beginning, as a large company, they're very decentralized.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to find an opportunity with them in the Chicagoland market. And when I went to them, they were about 25 million. And it was just a US business at 25 million, even though we were part of this $10 billion conglomeration at that time.
Okay. So it's Freudenberg Household Products. Just tell people a little bit about what that company does.
Sure. We'll go back up for a second. So Freudenberg, as Mike said, is a 175-year-old family-owned company. 400 family members all have equal stake. We're about $15 billion US today. I remember years ago, BASF used to do this commercial, and Freudenberg's very similar. They make a lot of stuff you interact with every day, but you don't know it because most of it's B2B. So they make sealants and gaskets in the automotive industry. They make things that control vibration on airplanes, sound control in the inside of your car. The thing that helps muffle the sound on the roof is Freudenberg. They make, if you've ever been to a tailor, there's the exterior wool and the interior silk lining of a jacket, the inside white stuff. Freudenberg makes that. So all kinds of stuff. And we were the household products division. So we were kind of the stepsister, so to speak, because the rest of the business was all about B2B. And we were there because we had a technology in nonwovens that made sense for the consumer to use, which was the Veleda cloth, which means like leather, and it's a cleaning cloth.
It's kind of like 3M. You're in everything, but nobody knows it. So you jumped past those dollars. And so when you started with the company, it was how much in terms of revenue?
It was about $25 million.
And what is it today?
It's more than 300 million. That's
Amazing.
just the US. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've got 400 shareholders.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second.
For sure.
I imagine there's an 80-20 rule in the shareholders where 20% of them are total pain in the butt, but they're driving most of the decisions, and 80% you never hear from. Is that accurate, or is it more like a 95-5?
Mike, we were really fortunate. The Freudenberg family, the founder, in the 30s when they really set this up. So we started in the 1849, but in the 30s, at that time, they said, hey, we're going to make equal stake for every family member, but they also wanted to try to keep family members out of it. So they actually they sit on a board, the family members do, and they nominate one person to be that person that communicates with the organization. And they started to move all the family members out of the business because they didn't want them in the business.
Yeah.
So we actually worked fairly well. Now, having said that, there's 100 family members in the US. We'd get calls of like, hey, I can't find this product at my little Stop and Shop in, Englewood, New Jersey. And so those are the kinds of calls we'd get. But in terms of in the business on a day-to-day basis, they did a really good job keeping themselves out of it.
Interesting. Yeah. We work with I have a lot of family businesses and Flourish Advisory boards. And what's amazing, America was built on family businesses. And what's great about family businesses is that, there's this imbued trust. People, it's all in the family. Everybody looks out for each other. What's terrible about family businesses is Thanksgiving dinner,
Yeah.
or when you have to replace your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law or your grandfather or your father, or when, and this happens more than you might imagine, where grandfather skips his children and says the grandchild really should take this over. And you can just imagine how that would tear a family apart, or could. So it cuts both ways with family businesses. Is there a story or a moment where you had, that you can share, where you had family members working against each other, or did the founder do such a good job that never happened?
Yeah, we had an interesting situation. So at the time, the person who was the speaker of the family, was meeting with the CEO and global CFO of our organization, and his son was actually in our business unit running the professional side, and they clearly didn't see the business the same way. His son was much more aggressive, came from a consulting background, wanted to make so many changes, do things quickly, more kind of an American way, which is kind of funny. And the father was much more in the Germanic, let's take our time, make sure we get it right, pragmatic, risk averse. And so there was this conflict, and we would witness it all the time. You talk to one and you'd get one side, you talk to the other, you get the other side, and you're just like, I just need to stay out of this, right? They need to resolve it themselves.
Did you have a coach in the business, or someone whose job it was to orchestrate or manage the tensions between factions in the family, or it just all worked itself out?
It all worked itself out because the basic tenet from Freudenberg is they wanted to keep family members out as much as possible. Today, there's only 2 of those 400 that actually work in the business, and the 2 aren't even in positions of major decision making.
Incredible.
So it was an unusual case. The one I described was unusual, where a son came in to the organization at that point, and he's since left of his own decision. So it's kind of taken care of itself.
Now, he left the position. He didn't leave the family, so he still gets a
his last
disbursement
name is,
now and then.
Yes, his last name's still Freudenberg, so he still gets a disbursement. Yeah.
Did you, from your seat, what's the hardest decision you ever delayed, and what did that delay cost the business?
Yeah, Mike, I would say, I wouldn't say it was one specific decision, but I would say it was a lesson I learned over time. And that is, when someone isn't right in their role, making that decision to move them out. It's a hard decision to make. And early in my career, I would always delay that because I would feel bad about that, because this person is running a household or needs the income, and it just isn't working. And I would always try to give them more time. And I had a very smart HR person who said, this isn't fair to the other people. And it took me a while for that to dawn on me that, it isn't fair to the other people who are working hard and getting things done every day. And if this person isn't fitting, I'm being empathetic to what's happening for them, but I'm not for all the other people. And that really helped a mind shift change for me.
Making decisions for the good of the whole is what leaders have to do. Have you ever had to fire a buddy or a friend?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
That must have been heartbreaking. Are you still buddies and friends, or was that relationship over?
No, I've always kept good relationships with them because I'm always open and honest. And they always know. I mean, people always know when it's not working out or it's not fitting in. And as long as you do it in a fair way, it works out. It works out. And most often, and I remember I learned this, I had this advice early in my career when I got my first job. A friend of mine's dad was actually the head of HR for the Pritzker Club. And he's the one that helped me get my first job. And he said to me, don't ever feel bad about getting fired or losing a job, because it's always the beginning of something else. Yeah, and that worked out very well for me.
Yeah. Have you ever fired a dog?
I wish I could do something with this dog right now.
I think I told you earlier that my first dog barked all the time, and I got a bunch of toilet paper rolls and I'd wing them at the dog every time it barked, so it would bark and duck. I trained the dog to bark and duck for the rest of its life. Okay. So do you have So keep going. So you're at FHP, and how is it that you finally wound up running an organization? What was that like?
Yeah. So when I came in as the marketing director, kind of closed that loop. So I knew that I didn't want to go east, and I knew that I wanted to find a small company where I could be a big fish in a small pond. I wanted to stay on the marketing side, and I wanted it to be consumer products. And I was really fortunate that this opportunity came up right here in my backyard in the Chicagoland area with Freudenberg. And they were looking for someone to launch their global brand Vileda. They had just acquired this company called Maddock. I don't know if you remember the old
I remember
infomercials from years ago, Maddock.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to use this company to launch their global brand Vileda into the US market. And so it was an unbelievable opportunity. So I took it, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. The only thing I missed on, I thought I wanted a publicly held company because, this was 99 and everyone was getting rich from shares. This was a privately held company. But in the end, I was glad it was a privately held company because I think I learned a lot from that. So that brought me into the organization.
Yeah. So let's pause there for a second. So, what do you know about working for a privately held company versus, because you did both, versus a publicly held company that would be of value to someone listening to this? Like if you're trying to decide, should I go work for Unilever or should I go work for FHP? Like what are the top 3 things to consider, do you think?
Yeah. I would say the first is the speed is different. Family-owned companies don't have to worry about quarterly reports.
Yeah.
So often decisions can be slower, but at the same time, decisions can be made that are better for the long term than the short term. I would say that's one of the biggest things. So if you're looking for a much faster pace, something that's more publicly held will be faster paced. If you're looking for equity in a company, of course, the only way I could get equity is if I married a Freudenberg daughter.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast. I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but publicly held companies, of course, you have an opportunity to do that. And then I would say the third thing is publicly held companies have a lot more access to capital than privately held companies do, because obviously they can play against their market equity, where a privately held company has to go to banks and get loaned based on their
yeah, I would build on that from my experience in innovation land, privately held companies, since they don't have to answer for quarterly reports, can take more risk. In other words, when you set up a bunch of soldiers and say you're going to be measured every quarter by shareholders, they're not going to put many chips on the table because they want to be conservative and make sure they make their numbers. So my experience with FHP is you took some chances. You launched a bunch of new products, which is something that is harder to do at scale from my experience, unless you've got a really, really great innovation engine like P&G had for many, many years. Okay. So what did they ask you? Like, what was your charge when you're leading North and South America? What was the request? Was it growth? Was it alignment? What did they want from you?
Profitable growth. Freudenberg has a great vision where they want to be a third in each of the key regions of the world. So they want to be a third of their net sales and profit coming from the Euro area, a third of their profits coming from the Americas, sales and profit, and a third of sales and profits come from Asia Pacific. And North America, as we were a German-based company, North America and South America were a bit behind. So my charge was, we need you to grow. We need you to grow quickly, but we still need profit. So it isn't just invest and we're willing to take a loss. Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I want to know. So in Flourish Advisory Boards, we've got the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, and the orchestrator. Those are the types of presidents and CEOs that we have. Based on your pedigree, I'm not sure which one of those seats, but I know that you have a finance degree, operator. You worked in sales, rainmaker. You are a marketer, visionary. So what are the key? So when someone says you need to grow profitably, what are the levers or lessons? Like, what do you do? What did you do to make sure that happened?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I specifically followed the book Good to Great, but a lot of what I did was that pathway. When I first took over as the regional president in 2014, I started with people. And I mentioned earlier, I had a great HR person, and she really helped me make sure that we had the right team in place. So she was already there, fortunately. So she and I were together. We made sure we had the right finance person. So we found this outstanding person within the Freudenberg group. We moved a marketing director in from Europe as the head of marketing. Sales was always difficult to fill, but ultimately we did find the right sales role. Operations was always challenging as well, but fortunately we have a lot of bench strength within Freudenberg to move in the operations side. So getting the team right was the first thing.
First who, then what is Jim Collins, good to great.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So get the right team on the bus. And just real quickly, when you say I had a really good finance or really good what made them really good? Were you looking at values? Were you looking at CV? What makes a good teammate for you?
Yeah, it was twofold. They have to be experts in their field, but they also have to know that we're running a business. Oftentimes, especially in smaller companies, if you get someone who's a great finance person, but that's all they see is the balance sheet and the P&L, and they don't realize sometimes you have to make decisions that are based on other points, you can have a struggle. And so those people are the ones that I was fortunate enough to bring in that saw at the end of the day, this might, from an HR standpoint, this might not be the right decision today, but for the long term, this is a good decision. And so they fully support it.
So Tim, I have made the mistake, and I've seen other leaders make the mistake of unwittingly surrounding themselves with people who were expert at finance, expert at operations, expert at sales, but they thought too much like me. In other words, like their reaction was to have new ideas instead of doubling down. Did you ever realize, oh my gosh, I have hired someone that thinks too much like me? It's very rarely a problem when you're at odds with your executive team because you want people that disagree. But did you wake up any time in your career and say, I've got someone on my team that is just, too agreeable?
Too much like me. Fortunately, no. I haven't had that experience.
Okay, well, you're way better than me then.
No, maybe Mike, I just wasn't as insightful as you are. And maybe they were.
Nice try. No.
Well, it could be, right?
Clearly, you're better. Yeah. So, and how did it go? Profitable growth.
So, following that process, right, then it was confronting the brutal reality. So we're talking about mops and brooms, and it's not the sexiest category. And at the same time, actually, a day after I started was the day Swiffer launched. So Swiffer was a direct threat to us. And Mike, if you remember, you and I met because we were making packaging for our competitive product to Swiffer called Ecstatic. That's where you and I first
I recall
met each other. Yeah.
We had worked in the past prior to that with P&G on a number of really interesting products that are in the market today. So it's a great category.
Yep. Yeah. But in general, mops and brooms are kind of a sleepy category that were under fire from P&G. And the competitors and we had tended to not so much worry about the consumer. We worried about getting space on the shelf. So it was all about distribution. So we were creating more SKUs that weren't because the consumer said they wanted a mop with a brush on the head, but it was because we could do it. So we'd make a mop with a brush on the head, go to Walmart and say, hey, you got to carry this one and this one because now it's different, right? And that's the way the category had been run. So that was the brutal reality of saying, okay, every year we're launching new stuff that's not consumer relevant. We're creating this massive portfolio of 1,000 products. So we're spending all of our time on operational efficiency. And then next year we launch a new product and the old one is now, not really important anymore, but we don't kill it. We created this big monster. So that was the reality.
Yeah. And it sounds like I have a friend, Dave Patrick, and he has a great idea around the center of gravity in a business. And he tells a story about how he worked for a company that had all these apartment complexes and he was doing interviews with their employees. And one of them said, hey, I went across the street and they're offering 10% off if you sign a lease. And she was like, we don't do that. Well, they also have this promotion. We don't do that. And he realized that the center of gravity in this company was the accounting department. They had built a business that said no. And oftentimes in consumer packaged goods companies, the center of gravity is in sales. And the salespeople are like, I need something new. I need something new. I need something new. So it sounds like you showed up and like, okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, I hated the words, I already sold it in.
Yeah.
Walmart already said yes. I'm like, to what? I don't even know what we're talking about yet. But in fairness, because we weren't giving them anything on which they could build, right? So now comes the hedgehog part. We looked around and said, we need a product that's going to be our lead product that's going to change this game. And we're going to take the risk and invest in it. And we had this product that was developed in Europe called the Easy Ring and Clean. It was a spin mop. It still is a spin mop. And we thought that could be the one. So we actually put it out on Amazon, and we had it in limited distribution in Walmart. And we noticed pretty quickly there was a high consumer affinity to that product. We also did some consumer research, and we're like, okay, this can be our product we're going to build around.
So that's interesting. You used Amazon as a market test.
Yeah.
Did you do that all the time after that? Because go ahead.
In hindsight, right? I wouldn't say we said, let's put it on Amazon as a test, but we were like, well, we can get it on Amazon. So we did that.
Oh.
And the person who was running Amazon was trying different things, and we could see that our sales were going up. And then we started to see the magic thing. We saw our sales at Walmart increase when we would do things on Amazon that would make it more visible. And we realized there's this correlation.
Oh, so you, it's like putting two Starbucks next to each other. And if people see it it becomes like a marketing strategy to put things up online at the same time they're in retail. Am I getting that right?
Well, yes, because it's about points of contact, so there's what you see on TV, there's advertising, all kinds of forms of advertising today. But if you see it on Amazon, now you have kind of a product that is in your mind and you've seen it before. Now you're walking in Walmart, you see it in the aisle, you're like, I've seen that before. So you're willing to take a chance on it.
So you're talking about Jim Collins, and I had a chance to be one of the lucky 500 people that was with him a couple months ago in Chicago for a day. And I love his work. I mean, I've read Good to Great and Built to Last probably 6 times each. And yet, when I was with him, I learned for the first time about how to actually implement a flywheel. I've been using the metaphor since I first read the book. Did you have a flywheel that was like, Jim Collins says that if you get your flywheel right, it's your strategy forever. Did you have one that you could just systematically continue to improve each part of your flywheel and get the same results or better?
Yeah, it was. So this product, as the hedgehog, was part of the strategy of fewer, bigger, longer, and that was kind of the flywheel. And what I mean by that is, we talked earlier, we'd launch a new product every year. So we had no consumer perception because they were buying a product every 4 to 5 years. So if you're launching something every year, that's not even their frame of reference. From a production standpoint, it's a disaster because every year we're launching something new and we've got a supply chain and everything else, and we got to bring that in. So we're spending all this time on the supply chain of the product. And then we wouldn't support that thing much longer, and then it would just kind of be in the end of our portfolio. So this item, fewer, bigger, longer, was we are going to launch this thing. It's consumer relevant. We know it from the research we did. We are not just going to launch it for a year. We're going to support that for 5 or 6 years. And we're going to make that the biggest product in the category. Typical penetration on a mop or broom that we would launch, I mean, literally be in the 1 or 2%. We are today with Easy Ring and Clean about 30% in the US at 50% in Canada, household penetration. So 30% of the households in the US have it, 50% in Canada have that. So that's kind of the flywheel, and we're making it in Aurora. So we're making this millions of the same thing over and over again. You could see how that would transform a business who was making basically a job shop, making 500 different SKUs in really small amounts, to starting to make the same thing over and over again. The efficiencies are enormous.
I think that that's incredible. And like a takeaway for the flywheel and from Jim Collins was that he uses the phrase, if we do this, then we must certainly do this, as a way to connect each part of the flywheel. So if I say that, like, if we do this, then we must certainly do this. What connect two parts of your flywheel with that phrase between them?
Yeah. So if we start supporting this item, we need to give up on the other items. We need to say no to things we used to make in the past. We need to say no to the retailer when he says, I want something different.
Yeah.
You know,
and
we
that's
say
the art
no.
of strategy, right?
That's the art of strategy. We're going to keep supporting this. We're going to make it's better for you. You're going to be able to take fewer SKUs now in your category, because this is going to be the lead item. You're going to make more money on this than the rest of your, 8 feet or 12 feet combined. So saying we must get rid of these other items. We must stop producing some items. We must start building innovation based on this idea of fewer, bigger, longer, and not go back to the old world of let's just create something that kind of looks like this. Playing the distribution game. We must stop creating different SKUs for every retailer, because that rips our business apart, and it actually lowers consumer consistency with your products, because they see something different when they're in Target versus Walmart versus, I wanted to say Kmart, that ages me, versus Amazon versus Costco versus Sam's. If they see something different everywhere, they're losing consistency of that product. So we must have the same product everywhere.
I love it. I'll murder Michael Porter, but the quote is something like, strategy is more about what you're not going to do than what you are doing. And I can imagine you starting executive meetings with the stop doing list. Let's start by talking about what we're not going to do anymore, because it creates the clearing, and it lines up right with what you're talking about. If we don't do this, it's going to create more oxygen, more fuel for this thing that we can really focus on. All right. So I have some lightning.
Can I just build on that really quickly though? Because I actually, this came up late last year. There was, it was something that the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, why am I blanking on his name?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett said it. And he said, great managers say no, like the best managers say no a lot. And that is so true. And that reminded me, I used to use the Great Big No. It's a song from the Lemonheads.
Yeah.
The Great Big No, because it is. Saying no is more important in your strategy than saying yes. It's easy to say yes to everything, and then you really don't have a strategy. You're just doing what you always did. There's some great stuff out there on YouTube. You can find videos of Steve Jobs talking about saying no is ultimately what led to the development of the iPod. Otherwise, he just would have had another BlackBerry type product. So saying, you hit on the most important thing in developing a strategy is knowing what you're going to say no to.
Yeah,
sorry about
I love it. I know. Don't be sorry. That is, and I want to notice that I could always tell when someone had psychically left one of my companies, because they'd start talking about the company like, well, you guys really need to figure out how to do this. I'm like, you guys? And I'm noticing that you are still weeing. Oh, yeah. We did this. We do this. We've got this going on right now. And I want to make the point that you are on to other things. So if anybody out there, I am now your pimp, Tim. I am Tim. I know you're not looking. I know you're doing executive coaching and doing all kinds of great things. You're not in the market, but if anybody out there is hearing this and looking for someone that has worn all the hats and knows how to grow a consumer packaged good company, my goodness, I would hire you in a moment. Mostly because of your values, and secondarily because of all the good things you've done. I've gotten to watch from the cheap seats as you've grown a company. So let me give you some lightning round questions.
All right.
And just say the first thing that comes to your head, unless it's Mike, you're a jackass, and then hold that for later. What decisions have you overthought the most as a leader?
What decisions have I overthought the most? I'd go back to what I said earlier, firing people early in my career. I would overthink that way too much. If they're not right, they're not right. It's hard to change the track.
That's because you're kind, and it is symptomatic of most.
It's empathetic.
Thoughtful. Yes.
Empathetic, but you put the empathy in the right place. And as I said, I learned to put the empathy towards the other people in the business and that person that needs to leave. It's better for them too, and do it in the right way. Yeah.
It reminds me of a story. I had a partner walk in and he said, okay, I just caught this person talking about you behind your back. Either you're going to walk out there and fire this person or I'm going to do it right now. I'm like, okay, because I'd been making excuses. Okay. Best advice you ignored and later regretted ignoring.
Oh, it was it was when we acquired O'Cedar in 2003. Someone told me to watch out for culture, and I thought I did. I thought I watched out for culture, but what I did is I just looked at HR processes. So I made sure we transferred all the files, the HR files. We made sure we did the WARN Act, whoever was getting laid off, and did all that. But I never thought about culture. And it bited us in the ass because we were about the same size of the company we acquired, and we brought in a whole bunch of people from other companies. And without thinking about culture, we ended up with like a massive nothingness. No one knew how to make decisions. Everyone was fighting. I wish I would have listened early on to say, hey, make sure you do something about culture.
That's really interesting. I'm surprised by that because you're a values guy. So, but thank you for sharing that. What do presidents or CEOs worry about that they shouldn't?
Tomorrow. Often what happened yesterday. I remember, I think what made me where I am today is I had a lot of great leaders through my career and some bad leaders, and I've learned from all of them, and I've always carried along those moments that I learned the most about. And it was the first restructuring at Unilever. Our CEO, Charlie Strauss, said, we are spending too much time where the executives are driving the business by looking in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. We can't keep looking in the rearview mirror. We need to know the lessons, but we're the ones that need to be looking through the windshield to where we're taking this thing. So that always stuck with me.
Awesome.
So too often you're worried about what happened yesterday without taking the learnings and going forward.
Yeah, there are some great quotes about. Anyway, I won't digress, but wonderful. What gets harder the more successful you become?
Making sure that you have a personal life and a professional life, and making sure that you keep things that have been important to you for years important, whether that's family, friends, whatever that might be for you, pets. Make sure that you still keep that as part of your life, because that's what made you who you are. And once you start losing that, I don't think, overnight you'll realize it, but in 10 years, you'll regret some things.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. Last question. Who do you trust to tell you the truth now?
Oh, my wife, by far. She knows me extraordinarily well, and we talk business a lot. Even though she didn't work with me, she has been with me through most of my career, so she knows what I can do and what I can't do. She knows. Matter of fact, once early on with Unilever, I was frustrated, said I'll quit and maybe start my own business. She was like, you could never handle that. You couldn't handle it. If you had to put a bunch of money on a credit card and you had to pay the interest on the credit card, she's like, you couldn't do it. And early on, she was absolutely right. So I trust her. She always gives me the cold, hard medicine.
Well, lucky you. Lucky us. Okay, Tim, thank you so much. I just love spending time with you, and I'm grateful that we've been part of each other's journeys and that you would show up and share some of your wisdom with our audience. So thank you so much.
No, well, thank you, Mike. And then, as we said, we met years ago, and I really appreciate watching you grow and develop. And the things you have done are really outstanding and have been a source of inspiration for me in many ways. So keep it up. And thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Coach John Wooden said, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So I'm happy you're my friend, Tim.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Mike.